The counting journal lets you calculate the current on-hand inventory level that is recorded for a group of items and then post the actual physical count to make the adjustments necessary to reconcile their differences. For example, Condoso conducts two types of physical inventory: cycle counting that varies in frequency by item, and tag counting that they perform for their year-end inventory. Condoso's warehouse manager has determined which items must be cycle counted and when. For example, all items that have a value greater than $1,000 are cycle counted monthly. Items with a value between $500 and $1,000 are cycle counted every 2 months. And items with a value between $250 and $500 are cycle counted quarterly. Items with a value lower than $250 are not cycle counted, but only inventoried one time per year during the year-end inventory process. The Condoso company uses the cycle counting journal to support this process. In comparison, at year-end, the warehouse shuts down for 3 days for tag counting. During this process, the whole team counts every item in the warehouse by using the tag counting journal. You can use warehouses to record multiple product dimension configurations for your items for each warehouse. Warehouse items are a supplement to inventory items and do not replace them, although they are related to them. When you perform cycle counting in multiple warehouses, a warehouse item must be set up for each item configuration for each warehouse. By default, when you select Counting Group on the General Fast tab of the Release Products form, a warehouse item is created automatically without a specific warehouse. To define cycle counts for items where multiple warehouses exist, the warehouse item forms allow for identification of which counting group should be used for each warehouse. Each warehouse item can have its own counting group, warehouse management, and product dimension setup. The counting group also lets you create logical groupings of items depending on how you want to count them. Typically, logical groups are based on item value, warehouse section, ABC codes, inventory turnover, or similar factors. Let's create some counting groups and then link them to warehouse items in AX. To create the cycle counting groups, we'll go to Inventory Management, Setup, Inventory, and then Counting Groups. Here you can see 3 different samples of counting groups. In my demo data, I have 3 groups, one for manual, one for monthly, and one for items that have a 0 quantity in stock. If I wanted to count some items every 60 days, I could create another new group by clicking the new icon, giving it a name or a number. I'm going to call mine 60 days, and then give it a name. Once you've typed in the name, you must select the counting code. There are 4 options available in AX. The manual option indicates that the items will be counted manually as you select them based on other criteria. Period, which is the option we'll use for this example, which allows you to specify how many days in between the cycle count. 0 in stock, which indicates that the item will only be counted when AX shows that there are no items on hand, and minimum, which indicates that the item should be counted when the minimum quantity is achieved. The minimum is set up on the item in the warehouse items form. For this example, we'll select period and then type 60 into the counting period form. Now that we have created a new counting group, we can start to link it to our items. So let's close this form down and go to Product Information Management. We'll open the Released Products form, select the item. I'll use the baby t-shirt that we created earlier for this particular example. Then, on the Manage Inventory tab in the Action pane, we'll click the Warehouse Items button in the Warehouse group. You'll notice that a blank record is created automatically without a warehouse. You do have the option of selecting a counting group on the item. Let me show you that, and then we'll come back to this screen. So, I'm going to click the Edit button in the Maintain group of the Action pane on the Product tab. Then, on the Manage Inventory tab, we'll select a counting group. Here you can see the counting group drop-down box, and I can select a counting group to be used for this item by default. If this item was only stored in one warehouse, this technique would work well. However, let's say this item is stored in many warehouses, so we'll go back to the Manage Inventory tab and click Warehouse Items. You'll notice that the 60 days counting group is now populated in the blank record that was automatically created. To override this value in different warehouses, I need to create new records. So I'll click the New icon, select a warehouse, and then I can override the values. On the Locations tab, you can specify additional information such as the store zone, default receipt and issue locations, picking locations, and required minimums. This is useful when you're using the minimum stock counting, cycle counting group type. So if I were to type 100 in here, this item would only be counted when the minimum is reached. This would only be achieved if the counting group I selected is set to the minimum option. You could repeat this process by selecting another warehouse and selecting a different option. So now in Warehouse 13, counting group 10 will be used. In Warehouse 11, counting group 30 will be used. But in all other warehouses, the 60 days counting group will be used. Once you've completed this setup, you can start to create and process cycle counting journals, which I'll talk about in the next lesson.